7.
Now, disgraced Paralympian Oscar Pistorius could return to jail tomorrow. Judge Thokozile Masipa will deliver Oscar's sentence for murdering his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp. Oscar shot and killed Reva on Valentine's Day in 2019. Now, the sentencing comes 3 weeks after the court hearing in Pretoria. An emotional father, Barry Steenkamp, insisted then that Reva's murder pictures be released for the world to see the trauma that his daughter went through. He said that Oscar must pay for his crimes. And Oscar's defense team, on the other hand, paraded the disgraced athlete on his stumps in court. Many say it was a desperate bid for sympathy and a lenient sentence.
We don't see any different from the other cases that are being investigated. We've been always saying our members are doing all their best to make sure that criminals are brought to book. So we don't expect any difference in terms of the investigations or in terms of what's going to happen tomorrow, because look, Oscar is a South African citizen, just like any other member of this country.
South African Prisoners Organisation for Human Rights national spokesperson Golden Miles Bood joins us live in studio. We also have Etienne van der Merwe, criminal lawyer, in the studio with us. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Now, well, my first question to you is basically, what options does Oscar have now as he looks at his term in jail?
So,
yes, I can start with you.
I think the first thing that Oscar has to consider is obviously what sentence he does get. Obviously, murder carries a minimum sentence of 15 years. Judge Masipa has to take into consideration the fact that he has already, between quotes, served a year in prison, which obviously needs to be taken off of whatever her sentence is. Additionally, she needs to take into consideration his disability as well as his conduct while in prison to come to a reasonable sentence. Only once that decision has been made do I think Oscar, actually has any footing to look at what his next step would be. Does he accept the sentence, or does he want to proceed to appeal the sentence and see if another court would give him a lighter sentence?
Now, it's a very sort of emotional situation, especially having Barry come in and having testified on the stand not so long ago, and having to have Oscar go on his stump. A lot of people would say that it was more of a if I can put it in any other words, a stunt to sort of gain sympathy from the judge. How do you think this would play in his favor in terms of the disability? Does the judge have to consider that factor as they've put in court? Or is that something that we have to put aside and say, you know what, Oscar did do his deed and he has to pay the price?
Well, I think in the contrary. The judge will have to take into cognizance the denial that Oscar has embarked on for almost 4 years. And I think that will also haunt him one day when he appears in front of the parole board. Whether by that time he would have come to terms that his responsibility is and now will be to serve a sentence of a heinous crime that he has committed. Now, when you are in prison doing your time, there will be some processes that you will have to go through. And he will appear in front of the parole board, and the parole board would like to know then, when he appears, have he come to terms that he committed a senseless, brutal, cold-blooded murder? Has he now come to terms that he is serving a sentence, he's paying his dues to the community? Have he now come to terms that he must be remorseful, he must be apologetic, and be an example when he comes out of prison to say to all of us that there isn't a perfect crime, let alone a perfect murder? And what one needs also to make abundantly clear is that have he take not the rap, because when you take the rap, you do it on behalf of others. Have he come to terms, or have he came to terms many, many months ago? He should have been in a process now where he has learned to live what prison life is all about, what it is to serve a sentence for a crime he has committed. And all this, I blame the Barry Roos of this world, including the Kenny Otrich, which was the assisting attorney, that it was bordering on ill legal advice where he was deliberately misled that he has got a case. He never had a case. And in the meantime, we think as an organization, Oscar Pistorius was used. By the way, his nickname is Gunman. He was used as a cash cow, and millions of monies which he earned honestly has gone down the drain. And here at the end of the day, judgment day is just tomorrow. You know, if I was Oscar Pistorius, I was going to take a fool's advice 4 years ago. You know, go in front of the magistrate long before the case go to a high court. Fire your spokespersons, your propagandistic and notorious spokesperson. Fire your best lawyers in the country. Take the stand and tell us all what happened, because we are still yearning to know what really happened that fatal night where he shot an innocent person who never posed any threat to him.
Now, a lot of how can I say, suspense or hearsay has been said about Oscar's recent interview with an international broadcaster. Obviously, the family had said that they weren't happy about it, and the sister came forward and said, you know what, he hasn't even apologized to us. And I just want to know, what kind of legal implications does that interview have on his case? Does that influence it in any way?
Well, I think it's something the judge has to take into consideration. Oscar didn't even testify in mitigation of sentence, and yet he's willing to go on international TV and, you know, sort of present his side of the case, as he put it. You know, surely it must weigh heavily on a judge's mind. He's not willing to come under oath and talk to her, and yet he's willing to come onto this international program that there's been a lot of banter about, that it was staged, you know, it had a specific structure to it, you know, in such a way as to sort of weight the interview in his favor, to make him appear remorseful, to make him appear more like the victim than the actual, you know, convict. So I think it's something that definitely has to play into the judge's sort of decision-making process when she comes to her decision.
And now when we speak about the judge making her decision in terms of Oscar's sentencing, now we've already known that he's served a bit of his sentence, and obviously he was sent home after that. What kind of a sentence would it be? Because a lot of people say that, you know what, this man has served this amount of time on his sentence. Is he going to have to start from scratch? Is he going to, is the judge going to include those years that, that time that he served already? How is it going to work legally?
So that period that he has served will have to come off of the period. So like I mentioned earlier, murder has a minimum sentence of 15 years. So that year obviously has to be deducted from there. Additionally, you know, she's always at liberty, you know, being the master of her own court, to give him a sentence that's mainly incarceration, and provide a portion of it to be a suspended sentence. Like I also said, you need to take into consideration his personal circumstances and the like. I'm expecting a sentence of probably about 11 years jail time. And then obviously, once again, like your guest said, you know, he has to come before the parole board as well, and you know, once a certain minimum period has been served, and they'll take into consideration his conduct, his remorsefulness, and whether he gets released early again, like we saw previously.
Now, I'll take a case that is, I wouldn't say similar, but another celebrity who got charged with murder not so long ago was Joob, who was a South African rapper. Now, unfortunately, in his incident, he went to jail because he was high on narcotics and had crashed into some school children. And his sentence has been also quite lengthy, and he went straight to jail. Now, a lot of people would argue that there's sort of almost like a leniency towards Oscar. If that is the case, how do you view this?
Look, what needs to happen here, we need to preserve the transformation of the criminal justice system post-1994. And we must also keep in mind that the criminal justice system was inherited from an apartheid, very brutal criminal justice system. And the judge will have to keep in mind that there is a prescribed minimum mandatory sentence for such a murder. And in order to save face, to show South Africans and the world that we are working towards a transformation of our criminal justice system, the minimum sentence must be meted out to Oscar Pistorius. And by the way, he won't even serve half of his sentence, whatever sentence they're going to mete out against him. And have he done that some times ago, and we would be, as an organization, say, okay, my brother, you have committed the crime, you have done the time, you are now on your way out. Please come out here and tell the world that it is not cool to shoot at the slightest provocation. But then, you know, your listeners would then look at me and say, but listen, who's talking? Miles Boode from the South African Prisoners Organization for Human Rights. Is he not the one that sing the hymns and blow the horn of these scumbags and criminals and rapists and etc.? But then SAPO was never meant that if you have committed a crime, you must not be charged, arrested, charged, prosecuted, and do your time. And the sooner Oscar Pistorius comes to terms to the fact that he's done something wrong, the better. And he should have saved millions of his rands and should have used some of those monies to renovate, to develop and help educate offenders with his contribution, because he's a wealthy man. And that counts when you are an offender that then work towards you becoming a modern prisoner, a model prisoner that will be given some accolades when you appear in front of the parole board to get early release, and so that you do the rest of your miserable time outside the four walls. You know, and we would like to thank the progressive women's movement of South Africa, led by Jacqueline Mofokeng, because if she was not there, I don't think that the fire was still going to be burning up to today. And it has made it very clear that women are no more going to tolerate any abuse and any victimization from men, never mind who they are, how wealthy they are, and who they know.
Now, looking back, speaking about criminal rehabilitation, one would say that Oscar's had quite a, I wouldn't say pompous, but quite an aggressive kind of history. I mean, we remember the restaurant incident where the shot was fired, and the alleged car incident with the ex-girlfriend where a shot was fired is there as well. Now, we're speaking about remorse. We're speaking about someone who obviously did something that he obviously regrets to some extent, but we feel as a public or jury, if I can say, that he's not showing enough remorse, or he hasn't apologized to the family. Is he, if there's such a word, can we rehabilitate him in terms of his aggression, or rather his aggressive behavior, and what he's done? Because we've seen him in court. He looks very stressed. He's probably lost a bit of weight, etc. Is he a type of person whom we can see as a rehabilitation project?
No. Look, I would like to pay him a visit after the hammer has fallen, because the hammer is going to fall and it is inevitable. It's going to happen tomorrow. I would like to visit him for the first time as a veteran ex-offender that has been rehabilitated. And rehabilitation, I did it all by myself, you know, because I did time during the heydays of apartheid where waar daar geen genade was vir 'n bandiet nie. But I hope he will then come to terms that, look, man, the old adage that says talk is cheap and it is money that buys the whiskey. I don't believe in that anymore when it comes to him, because he has spent all his millions. And still, Judgment Day is inevitable. About rehabilitation, he needs then to come to terms whilst he is in prison, because that is where he's going. And he can do so much as a wealthy person who's got a wealthy background. It's unbelievable if he can just change it. He must leave this arrogance and being cheeky, you know, and think that because he's got money, he can get away with it. He can get rehabilitated overnight if he could just come to terms and realize that he's done something very horrible. And it is unforgivable, maybe unforgettable, and join the mainstream of the criminal class and become a better South African ever after.
Now, the possibility of appeal after the sentencing, how possible is that?
So it's, one of the options open to Oscar. He's already exhausted his appeal on the conviction, but the sentence hasn't been handed down, so he's still at liberty to appeal the sentence. So you might find, if the sentence is not to his liking or he still has funds left, that he does appeal the sentence. In which case what you'll in all likelihood find tomorrow is that they ask that he does not be immediately imprisoned. He be released on bail pending such an appeal to be brought.
And if he's released on bail, how long would it take in a situation like that?
I think it would be another exercise, as we saw with the appeal on the conviction, where it gets dragged out, and even when he gets told there's no possible chance of success, he still wants to take it to the SCA, and still tries, sort of tries his luck and sees how far he can push it.
Wow. Okay, so now it is D-Day for Oscar, and we hope all the best for the Steenkamp family. And Oscar, well, we'll see at the end of the day what happens in his court. But I'd like to thank you both for joining me in studio, for giving your thoughts on the case and the rehabilitation and from the legal perspective on that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now moving on, it is quite riveting thinking that it is D-Day for Oscar. We will see what happens at the end of the day.